Hi there, my name is Dr. Ben Roberts from Durham University, and I'm really excited to be here on the Big Dig Nation Virtual Archaeology Festival. Really looking forward to meeting you and taking your questions after this presentation. So, I've arranged myself in front of the densest bookcase that I can find of really mind-numbingly boring archaeology books to give me extra credibility. And now we can begin. I'm going to share my screen with you. Brilliant. Now, I'm going to be talking today about a project called Barrow Time that I did with my friends at Dig Ventures and the Portable Antiquities Scheme. And we have a subtitle here that can only have been dreamt up by a man who's been trapped in a house for the last 3 months: Monumentality, Mortality, Metalwork and Morecambe. Now, the big question is what's happening during the Bronze Age in Northwest England. I'm a Bronze Age specialist. I love the Bronze Age. It's between about 2200 BC and 800 BC. For those of you who are new to it, so just over 4,000 years ago and just under 3,000 years ago. Now, we don't know much about what's going on in the Bronze Age for the simple reason that there may well have been loads of stuff going on, but no one's ever really looked in any great detail. And you can see this on these heat maps from the excellent Chris Green. The density of Bronze Age excavations in Northwest England, the density of Bronze Age data in Northwest England from historic environment records is very, very low, so deep, deep blue. The modern excavations stimulated by development of roads and housing schemes and other such things, again, very, very white in Northwest England, so we don't know much from there. However, there is a bright spot, and that bright spot is that members of the public, metal detectorists in particular, have been finding all sorts of things relating to the Bronze Age in Northwest England, and it's one of those discoveries that we start our story with. Found by Matt and David, who reported the discovery of Bronze Age bronze objects about 3,000 years old, late Bronze Age tanged chisel and dagger fragment from a site which they thought might be quite important. It's the top of a hill, and this hill overlooks Morecambe Bay. I can't show you the hill because we've got to keep the location secret, but they thought it was a new important site, and they were right. Now, soon after their discovery, there was an evaluation by the Portable Antiquities Scheme, which confirmed that there was a Bronze Age burial mound here. And in 2016, Dig Ventures, in partnership with Durham University and the PAS, and with funding from the Heritage Lottery Fund, undertook a major excavation of the site, which we also subsequently returned to in 2017. So I'm going to be talking to you about those 2 years of excavations. Now, I want to highlight the Dig Ventures approach here. I'm a big fan of it as an archaeologist, even though I'm not especially adept at all things digital. The actual impact of what they do is incredible. Instead of waiting 5, 10, 20 years for someone to patiently and boringly write up their excavation report and then release it to a readership of just a handful of people, you can actually report what you're finding in real time to anywhere in the world, and you can therefore increase participation of anyone who's interested in the archaeology. This can also help with fundraising as well. I think it's a fantastic system, both of recording the archaeology and of promoting it. And within this, we obviously had a website where you can see, and it's still up, you can see all the reports, you can see all the discoveries, you can see all the interviews, and you can judge how we might have aged in the last couple of years, should you wish. We also have a virtual museum as well. And so you can see some fantastic 3D scans, for instance, of some of the beautiful Bronze Age finds that were made. Now, as part of the broader public outreach in the area, we had pop-up museums. If you can't visit the site, how do you promote the site? You can do it digitally, but if you're in the local area, you want to see a bit more maybe. So we had pop-up museums in Morecambe and in Lancashire, which really enjoyed by hundreds of school children and many more adults, even though they just had very short runs of 2 or so weeks. And they were really a model for engaging people in excavation activity. Now I'm going to talk about 2 sites. The first one is the Morecambe Barrow. And we knew from the metal detectorists and their discovery and the evaluation by UCLan that something was going on. So we did a terrain model and geophysics model, and what we could see is there's a lump on top of the green hill that looks fairly circular, and we were interested in that. We could also see from the geophysics that there's some dark areas of activity we were also very interested in. And so we decided to put a trench to explore where that activity was going on, looking both between those areas of dark activity as well as around them, as well as in them as well. And you can see the trench from the first season that we're laying out here. Now, this is best interpreted in a phase plan, which I'm going to show you. Now, what we found is not just one phase of activity and not just, if you like, one prehistoric community that had used this hill fort site, several. So we could see three major phases of what was going on. We have from about 3,200 BC, the placing of a small selection of pits, which look like they've got sort of special ritual significance there, placing some human remains and some special fragmentary objects. These are the red pits that you can see highlighted here. Around about 4,000 years ago, 2,000 or so BC, you've got the construction of a large stone monument, almost like a stone donut called a ring cairn. And within the ring cairn, soon afterwards, are placed at least two major early Bronze Age cremations, cremated people placed there. And then obviously we've already heard about the late Bronze Age hoard from 3,000 years ago, around about 1000 BC. Now, there are some plough marks, unfortunately. You can see the green marks there. These are where the plough had impacted part of the site in earlier decades. But otherwise, it was largely untouched and just below the surface. So really impressive. These Middle Neolithic pits are special because we don't know much about the Middle Neolithic in northwest England. So this period about 3,200 BC with our pits indicated that you had the special deposition of human remains, but also objects such as these beautiful polished flint stone axe made of Langdale stone, just the north in Cumbria, flint flakes, arrowhead, and even some fragments of pottery as well. This is a rare discovery and indicates that this site, this hilltop location overlooking Morecambe Bay, was special to people even 5,000 years ago. You can see with the radiocarbon dates, we've got quite a range going on there, but we certainly have several confident Middle Neolithic pits. Whether they're contemporary or not is another question. Now, going back to our phase plan, we're going to have a look at the yellow areas there. These are the early Bronze Age cremations. I'm going to focus in on two in particular, placed inside that orange circle of this large stone donut. One is a food vessel urn, a fantastically intact burial where you had a large ceramic vessel there into which was placed an adult male cremation or lightly male cremation whilst still hot. You could even see the inside of the pot being burnt. And the parallels for this kind of ceramic vessel in terms of its form are coming largely from Northumberland and from Cheshire, and so not from the immediate local region. Now, this is important because when we did strontium isotope analysis on the cremations, a cutting edge technology on cremations, which had been done on very, very few in the UK at all, when we did this, it indicated this individual did not come from the local area. One of the main potential sources for this person, likely male, is from over the Pennines into Yorkshire. It's a very complete cremation that had been carefully gathered up and placed into this vessel, presumably cremated and quickly placed into the pot, buried with a nice thumbnail scraper. There was another cremation next door to it, not exactly contemporary, as you'll see, which was buried. This was unfortunately a lot more disturbed by the plough, but you had an adult human cremation with an accessory vessel, a nice, small, beautiful vessel, and you get these featuring across really nice burials in Britain, along with the collared urn vessel, another kind of ceramic type that we get in the early Bronze Age. And you've got parallels for this in Cheshire and indeed in Lancashire. Couldn't do strontium isotope analysis on this one. We could do radiocarbon dating on all of them. And what you can see is that we've got one burial which is clearly from around about 1900 to about 1700 or so BC. And we've got one burial from around about 1900 to maybe 1750 or so, 1700 or so BC. And we're not sure if these are exactly contemporary. We can't tell if they're related or anything like that, but this is two very, very close burials within this large monumental ring cairn in this stunning visually located site. And we need to talk about all the white stones that kept turning up. These tend to get a bit ignored in the archaeological literature, in some places, not in all cases, but this was something we kept on finding. All sorts of quartz and indeed rock crystal fragments were being found, not local to that hilltop, so they're being brought in, placed on the ring cairn, and this would have meant that when the sun strikes the stone, you'd have had a sparkly white effect on top of the hill, which would have given you, again, this visually striking location for the burial of evidently relatively important dead. Now, if we're trying to discuss this sort of stuff, there's all sorts of ways we can go about it, but I wanted to highlight that there is one parallel in the region, which is relatively close, at Manor Farm, just a few miles away, where you've got a cairn with two inhumations and a whole range of scattered other human remains on it, where you have an axe and a dagger in accompanying the burials. And this was excavated in the 80s. Now, this is important because it's quite a rare thing to actually have these objects in these kind of burials in northwest England. Daggers were a key artifact of symbolism in early Bronze Age burials, and they apparently symbolized importance, and you can get them in both flint and in metal. And they appear to be absent in large swathes of northwest England and even in my own county Durham. What we're seeing, therefore, is potentially the creation of burial rites in this part of North Lancashire that are from outside. And going with the strontium isotope analysis of the individual, these are individuals who are born outside of the region, who are coming into the region and being buried at a really important visually striking location in the region, overlooking Morecambe Bay. And you can see there's some very limited connections that we can see over the east and west. Most of the action in terms of food vessel burials or beaker burials, as Neil Wilkin demonstrated, or even our own food vessel urn, you can see in this sort of fairly dense distribution map, with the white triangles, they're clustered up the eastern coast, not on the western coast for Cumbria, for instance, and into Northumberland. But they are frequently found within cairns. And this is really interesting because obviously we have our discovery in a cairn. So what I'm thinking is that we are looking at potentially a east to west coast connection here, and whether that's Northumberland or whether that's York, whether that's from Scotland or Northumberland, or whether it's Yorkshire, not sure, but certainly there appears to be something that is trans-Pennine going on in terms of the individuals being buried at our ring cairn site. Now, this was not all. Just 5 miles away during our excavations, a further late Bronze Age treasure hoard was found, but much bigger than the one at Morecambe. This one at Lancaster was substantial, and it was found almost uniquely inside a huge burnt mound. Burnt mounds are the names, as the name suggests, large amounts of burnt material. Could have been used for Bronze Age cooking or textile making or even brewing or saunas. Jury's still out on a lot of these. Again, a previously unknown site. A large pit was cut into it, and inside you had a selection of absolutely stunning Bronze Age objects. It's a real pleasure to present these. This is one of the largest and most spectacular hoards in northwest England, and you've got a selection of bronze spearheads. You've got some bronze tools, some axes and chisels there, some personal ornaments with the bracelets and the arm rings, and also what we think are rings related to horse harnesses. This is important, this harness ring here with a 3D model from our virtual museum. This is important because the horse would appear to be becoming a part of the way of life in late Bronze Age Britain in relation to combat. Now, there's a big debate about when the horse is coming in terms of British prehistory and how early people were using domesticated horses for riding or for pulling things. But in the late Bronze Age, you've got an explosion of weaponry. You've got an explosion of fortified, or at least partially fortified sites. And you also have the placing of horse gear with weapons. And the swords start getting a bit longer, and we start thinking, well, maybe we're dealing with the emergence of mounted combat. And you can see this in some of the comparable hordes, of which there are only a few. And you get some of these, for instance, in Scotland at the Peel Hill Horde. You've got a selection of weaponry. You've got your spearheads, your swords, you've got your horse harness rings there as well. You have them in the Horsehope Horde in Peeblesshire, where you've got again a selection of those rings, but also Fallera, as they're known as, those bronze discs to be placed on horses, and most spectacularly at the St Andrews Horde in Fife in Scotland. You're getting similar hordes over in Ireland as well, and indeed one of our bronze objects has only really been found in Ireland. The interesting chisel-looking ornament has only really parallels in Ireland. So we've got connections across the Irish Sea here, as well as into Scotland with this horde. Now, the key thing then to take away from all of this is that in both the Neolithic and in the Bronze Age in Northwest England, we are actually getting a lot of activity going on. And due to the fact that we haven't looked for it properly as archaeologists, we haven't found it. And so we're assuming that this region was very quiet, but we can see the placing of Middle Neolithic pits, our visually stunning site, early Bronze Age burials, and late Bronze Age hordes just at one site, all of which reveal interconnections across large swathes of both Britain and Ireland, and possibly even beyond. Hopefully we'll be returning to the region to do more work to find out more fantastic things about what's going on. Thank you to all of the people on the screen. Thank you to you for watching. I'm really looking forward to taking your questions. Thank you very, very much.